Orida, the Nidana Shaki, or you that about the dance, that to our course of siege, Jean to Sumara, Rini King Muzon, Young Jew to us, you do Kola, Dapatorum Mujimara Swana, in Bayandu, or you. The Mont to us, you did John Amto Yambadan, Jenny D. To the Kaya Jean and do non I on you. Gombola driven out in Drago, Tsedengo, Jean to Sodan Matamba, Mambuchi, use on the Song and do Tandana, Tina, Gajin, Gombola drive Shabji, Ramgadan, Senator, then Gombola drive song goes on the Wurmbang, Zongarambang, I see Jeton. Or that in it, Zormaton, Chibra miss in a Kajigui, she couldn't do the tin take them and do see, take a resena. Or you toa carriers of our Jantana, or you toa the Tramzi Copa and Carvaja, Nanjur Shiva, Lola shop. Or that they need and Jerry Chamber, some dana, Honey, no Tora, Teso message, or you that do it to dead on Tenny, Somama Julaba, Somama Julaba, say to the dawn. Tati Kunani Chivati, John Sidney, Ramadan, Shiba Miki, Dambuni, Shiba Mashiba, Ishi, Koni, Jafi, no Turanjiva, Shiba, Shibi, Shina, Sitindagu, Gumbola Jean Sidney, Garkun News, or Travako News, that Travagon in some year. In some year on dinner, then the dawn. Then Dava Tumyango alone, Amlan Travano. And Trevor need a singer under one to buy and do. Tendaji dead, then good day on Jitamji Chambi, Ramgasa Drona, Jisangava Chambu. Jitoani Sonjawadi, Doasani Songano, Navalam Tombu, Nyamne, Yason, Kajan the Manjava in the Eastern. That you Taban Tombo lived in you go Yamne and buy and do. Taban Tombo lived in you go Yamne and go. Song don't you Mabu Yamne, you got you what a Namsanda what you divide and do those Mandava you are is another song you're doing.
So, with regards to the 3 core volumes, then, as stated before, it says that it is the third of these 3 core volumes which is regarded as being a valid or pure text source, and that. In the case of the first two of these 3 core volumes, then it is said that there is some discrepancy in the presentation, that it does not accord with the presentation of Nagarjuna's thought, and particularly referring to the Goa Samaja's completion, 5 stages of the completion stage. In the text, which is known as the illumination of the 5 stages of the completion stage yoga of Goa Samaja. Within that, then that there are some discrepancies that occur there. But also, it is said that because these are all practices accorded to practices accorded to those of the highest yoga tantra practitioners, and not only practicing at that level, but also having great realizations of the mind and engaging in those practices within the sphere of their incredible realizations. So sometimes when the instructions are presented for them, then those instructions appears differently in comparison to the presentation of the practices, presented for those of lower level practitioners, because in the between practitioners of of those that are highly realized and those that are not, then the difference in the practices like the earth and the sky. So again, it says that maybe those those discrepancies can be because of the presentation for those because these 3 core volumes are are just songs of spiritual experiences. So again, from that point of view, that it can be that kind of difference or discrepancy could be from that from that point of view presentation.
Taban Tombu Yamlen go song di two Jijamba, Dajijamba, Kilona, Yanji, Li Domboa, Toba Mami Yamlen go Kabla, Samla Charto de Dini Mandava Yamba Yandu, Gava Tabashi, Nongori, Dila, Chicken Turning go Medusa, that Tovi Ton Pijanzi, Shena, Sita, Yanji, Tsukashila, Nyanji, Donder, Tombanya, Tino Lam Choniba, Mayindi. Mayanozi, on the Nyanjimbashi, Gumnayan, Kurandani, Tavatomanjit, Kononi, Pujura Nivadi, Kuramani, Yang Dimani, Senashi, Nyanji, Nyanji, Dratan Javadi, Tomara Nyanji, Chambo, Jalachi, Tisha, Shambada, Nyanji, Donna, Tabajambu, Samchi, T. Tomani, Tombanyala, Nyabarijaba, and Nyabarijaba, Motela. Nyanji Musayo Maride Yana Jayati Tombanico Tonga Yendu or the Nyanji by Tonga Yendu Tela Nyanji Hanji de Chance and a Metayango Yuari or that Divachambu Yechi Nyanji Tonjavati T. Shikotoko Tombanya Taba Lola Nyambarijaba Tsena Tombanya Yerjan the Yurguachi Yango Yua and Titon Tindari Song Chudan. Young Daniel, Toby Jerana, Tamchi, Dayan, Diligence, Sijan, Shiman, Loba, Dayan, Zonda, Gumba on Dijan, Tenjunian, and Cheba on Dijano, no demon tomber, Dava Yoman, the Onjan Judo Lami Shala, Tuayan, Lami Miva, Congo, Nyajiva, Lapatana, Niva, Tendondra, Numi Ranjan. Or that numer on Shiva Mansomber, Travashiva, Lishi, and Dana, she is in it. Then Dana Sejit Sarahavi Marason Tindra Yuari, or that Namjuri, Numi, Sam, that you a Chantan travel, some Tramo, Yerjan, Tramo, the on the Java Cups, you seven or some the Nyamsa, Nyansi, Topper and Javachi, younger Yuai, and do what you are two damji. Nigma Dinu Yerjan Tramu Yella Shardiva Tombanya Ti Nita Tina Yango or Judan Dinam Trida Yenjan Sena Nigma de Namjir Yamba Masi Kwanza Jen Sijan Shuarman Jerusena Dan Nixon on the Java Dinu Dan Nimis and Yerjan Tramu Ding on the journey Tombanya Koa Yoba Tobko Tini Java Yena Lopa Don Zamba Don Gumba Namji Nyambu on the Java on Yendes in a Deni Samji Torna de la Mandava Namna Jiang the Gusena, but that's why and do thank you Nyala and Cheba Guis or Denia and Osena, but you that in Rachilan Guguri Mata, younger Susan Samla Shena, Grava Yuari, and but that in Rachilan Riku Ding.
So, which says that. In the case of the highly realized practitioners, then when they receive the instructions, then those instructions are not taken literally. It's not taken literally. But then if a practitioner at the beginner's level were to receive those instructions, then for their mind it would appear as all mutually exclusive. It would appear. So in this way, instructions that are applicable for those of the highest for the highest realized practitioners, and for when it is undertaken by individuals who are at the beginner's level, then it appears to be contradictory, kind of like that. Discrepancy arising not so much out of the the side of the instructions, but because of the varying mind levels, level of realization on the part of the practitioner, like that. So in the case. Rinpoche goes on to say that with regards to the, when we first engage in the practice, when we first engage in the practices, we first cultivate the mind of love and compassion and so forth, like bodhicitta. And then when we engage in a meditative state, engage in a meditative equipoise and emptiness. So although you do not have that mind of bodhicitta manifestly there, present, because what is directly being engaged is the mind of equipoise and emptiness, but that mind still bears the strength of the prior practices of love and compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. And so this mind, in a state of meditative equipoise and emptiness, then is experienced as an innate sense of great bliss, and the mind engaged in the equipoise of emptiness, then is like the exalted mind. So you have so therefore you have the exalted mind of great bliss, and then in accordance with the experiences or the writings of the great Mahasi, the Saraha, then it says that when you generate this primordial the primordial mind of clear light, the very subtle mind, and to this mind, then to this subjective mind, primordial mind of clear light, then all phenomena appears as a play of this mind, as a play of this mind. And then for those for those who do not have the arising of such a level of the mind, such a level of the subjective mind of the clear light, primordial mind of clear light, this innate mind of clear light, then things do not appear, phenomena do not appear as the play of that primordial mind.
Wajida Mara Chijilo Dugo, Jita Mala Rambo Jila Mara, Azona Tautambo Gona, Kangar Mambo Tino, Wajida, Chonsandra Mambo Tree, Kangar Mambo Tree, Namsina, Jila Topan Tron, Tongo Cubs, Tachuron, Chorongo Lombala Parandona, Gumjazo and Dukundiguse, that deep Cubs, Jita, Chorongo Gumjabgola, Namsina Yon, Kanganda and Tea on Secretaries, the Duna, Karazego, Taba Jela, Kapse, Semgo, Semsrud, Nalayan, Gandana Mabu Yangon Dusena, Songa Tony, Sentigo Sunda, Itan Tea. That though I did come, I see Chorongo Josa. The Nago Kangarjin Tayon and Itiza, Yitan de la Tada, the Niji Lami Mango, Yamyango Guni, Chorongo Semla. Kangardi, Sariachi on Gorisin Song Yuarua, or that pretty Nanja, then I touch you then I Durjin Johnny, Tamba, Machibo, Lama Tamba, Sharji Damola, 2 engine Sena, or that Lami Shirley, she goes, Jitinrago, Toban Tombo, Labor Cups, Johnny Songadeon, Chimbutaya meeting. That Yamna Jango, Lama Tamba Marasanja, I was sent it to Sudan, Tila Tuna, Kangar Seraji, Yuba and do, Tenda, Damba, Yamna Janji, Lami Miva, Congo, Nyala Shiba, Nyambo Tombanyala, Situ, the Jote, Gombi, and Tony Jiton, Lopin, Turtani, Terdan Drava, and Wasm the Tor and Jero was in a. Or you that Tendago Kavla, you Tendago Song, you chance of La Tagu and that you ding it. Third, Tisunda Marimba and do. Yam Machina, Yanji Kanganda want to go Mariva, they and doing you me Ranja, and then you me some Tamu, Tombanian Tonton, the Shiva Suzuki, Namji, show the Majava and do till I Yamna, you are Marie Sena. Chua Namji and awesome the Manton were dancing in Trevi, Shiva Lijin Dan, Sara Mawo Shivadanta, Sara Dango, Tinago Kala, Mamalami Sonjava, Dango, the Tango and the Son Yuari, or you that in the Imbayan, Shiva Dons and a Titon in the Gingers of you.
So if you take, for example, the life story of Milarepa, when he was initially guided by his teacher Marpa, then in the initial phase of his spiritual training, then Marpa put him through incredible physical hardship, and then after putting him through a series of physical hardship, then instructed him to engage in meditation, and then in order to generate the realizations of those meditations, then Marpa sent Milarepa away, to engage in these intensive forms of meditation, and then instructed him, saying that in the course of your meditation, should any difficulties arise, difficulty with generating the realizations of those meditations, then Marpa, gave him some sort of written instructions, which were not to be opened, but to be opened only when Milarepa experienced kind of conflicts within the mind, and so forth, and so then Milarepa accordingly, in accordance with the instructions of the Lama, then whenever he encountered the difficulties, then accordingly he opened up those those writings given to him by Marpa, and in this way clarified or cleared away all the difficulties of his meditation practices. So in this way, then as practitioners on the path, although you have instructions from the lineage masters, from Vajradhara, given by Vajradhara and successive lineage masters, up to one's own root guru, but in the actual engagement of the practices, then rather than just focusing on the scriptural texts of these lineage masters, then appropriately, then like in this biography, then it is good to rely upon the specific instructions of one's spiritual teachers in meditating on emptiness, and so by by counter-checking one's experience with one's spiritual teacher, receiving specific instructions catered to one's own needs and necessities like that, then through such a method of practice, then there will come a time when one is able to perceive emptiness directly, like looking at the palm of one's hand. So, prior to coming to such results in one's path and practices, then before that, then one might not encounter any difficulties, So it is through engaging in the practices and going through these experiences, then when one encounters, that when one encounters such as these difficulties, then one is able to apply the instructions given. But prior to that, because one doesn't have that experience, there isn't that difficulty. One hasn't gotten to that level to experience the difficulties of that point. So here it says, like, when one generates such as these innate primordial mind of clear light, then it is when one reaches these kind of experiences that one should remember the instructions of the Guru. And so in order to apply such as these instructions, then one has to be at the level of such practices to apply those instructions. But prior to that, then it is not applicable to one's own case like that.
That Tabchen Telua Chambu, Jizanaro Ala Yonju, Kamanamamud Nonganju, Tijuguni, and Zom Chula Yonju, Toban some Tombo Chula, Labor Capsa, or Juda, Telu Mara, Jizanaro Ala, that Churam has Tongono has sounded the Kumaja Shavasi in the Kano you are. Tani Tongono has on a Kumajab, Javnet that Tongongo the Voga Mara Zamna, or that him Yetama Butonari. Tandu na yon ji nyeda ri ton ji karse go kanga ri nyoma da nyam de jela yon to pa mukser jin ri chong yu sin sang yu wa wa pe na de da ti na yin go ta ban thong bo le bi kap se jin ga shi go to go ta ban chong ya yu ba pe ti na yin di yu di.
So there's also the story of Tilopa when he was guiding Naropa, then instructing Naropa in his meditational practices. At one point, Tilopa instructed Naropa to go to the shops in the village and to steal from there. And so of course, in accordance with the instructions of the Guru, then he went to steal, and then of course the shopkeeper caught him, and so started beating Naropa. But when going through that experience, then with each difficulty of that experience, then a certain experience spiritual experience arose within the mind of Naropa. So like that, it says that according to conditions that one experiences, then accordingly experiences arise out of those conditions.
Oji dati no tindawa yimba yendu tandana yanyon kardi ngondu jirna samten je tiyu kodu jirna mambanjar. Sanchi jiwa rangja tenye na ngudang wimi wayon mayo no shi rangja lanchi nigsam ti gomtob ji ngondu jirna shi gomji samten ji jesha. Ondi kodu jirna maruwa mambanjar la Maruwe Mabanjarla, Nyembo Dena, or Jungo Demba, women Cheba Mayano Shiva Dansino, or Judaji Maban Tavayana, to Karzego, Noas, Montichrea, Yua Mariti, Yena on Mabasi Jiti, and Toyon Duna, to Nakonda Wodit, Tensruko, Sonola, Noyongo Yuarua, Peti, Noja, or Karzego, Chengashiko, Toko, Nyamyongo, Teni, Nyamyon, Savari, Chiari, and do Piti, Tindra by Chudon, Yondi, the Onayon, something derby, or something derby, Chichi Samcher, Judame Baon, Yajater Shit, Yosabo Shaji and Rua Maluli, Ranjan Numa, Si John Loma Machine, Siji Tsutedan, Yon Timayembo, New Toago Tsungashina, Jimmy Ngome, Samcha something, may take a wrong year travel, ship, Ranjan Taba, Samla, something talk, Mameti. Ranya Dela Ni John Donga Mashi Sashin Tonga Nituji Gajon Tok the Yondan Kulungi Chunda Tavi and Juten Baru and Rubber Drumjirdi Nambi Juten go Dobi Nani song Kondo London Semna Majijon Yamada and Jiba Major Mashit Mashiva Niti Semna Vushon Shiksin Danijina Tamchi Tani song Shivaton. Or that in the two Sara Marasong Gerson and Sonjava, the two Jamajian that you Gravanda were using in Guyari, she was no Jonesy, she and Hasi Tandani Sadraton at the Ranjan Numasi, Shantan travel on some Tramoti, Monte Jetim, Monte Java, Toko, Marco, Tombanuka, Kovati, Tiniga, Duriona, Numal Hajiva, or Sergi, Sam. Yi Chukara Seji, Yi Chukar Drapa Tine and Lasi, Yaduna you have Chunya Muniva Maridi, Chunya Don Davaji Yangu Yuari, Sonola, T and by and do Tenya Guntuji, Samlu non lions, Simsel Mandava, Monsum de Yamse Yamba, Takshu Don, or that did Sena Marivishu Ayon, Medingi, Majoyan, you are Maridi, Majo Terry. Takshuji something Chishu Shashan, or you die some stage the Ninayon Yamyanda Medingi, or you Jean Atina Titani, Yamyon Serva Menayon, Tindago Chingashigo, Toku Yamyam Davari, Yangodusena, something Jessica Shashan, or that she shall on Jessica, Dinu Gumtuji, Mangi, Sabashi, and Ramaliva, Liso, Shandan Travel on some Tramodi, some Soma Jivas and Jen Kangala, Jivati, one the Jiva Caps, the younger you are ready, Tigo, Pichu Jitaka meeting, Lua Kanga leading in Trino John Shayamato, Tombanula, Kuayo, Midon, Toban, Torun, Drogun, Drogula, Nixum Tramodi, one the Jiva, Toji, Yamno, Chiran Druadon, Saran Druadon, Tombanula, Chiran Druaji, and do, or you get that in the Guni Young with this and the songs of the ding.
From she tumbled the member.
Or it done. She got to go, Jordan, Sheni Goya, Don Goya, say, Judy, some Sarabuji, Go, you are ready to Tindago Kabla 2 days on, Gurkananga 2 days on, tea cups that you some certain to a meeting in Mabantavan, or younger ready, tea Jesus to some sort of mandava, Yamno Chiberjanji, younger days, and that's song you are.
So, when initially, engaging in the practices of calm abiding, special insight, when engaging in these practices, of course, one needs great clarity of the mind. But initially, when one engages in these practices, one does not directly right away have that kind of clarity, but the mind feels very clouded and dark, like fumbling, kind of like that. And through engage and whatever the initially even the instructions, whatever one is unable to clearly apply it to the practices like that. But gradually, through gradual practices, and ultimately by cultivating in this kind of the primordial mind of clear light, in the very subtle wind and the mind, such mind of clear light, which at our ordinary level, although it does not manifest, then it does not, and one is unable to use it other than being being filled with the experience of mistaken appearances. But for those with the realizations and for those with the experience of such a mind of clear, the primary mind, the innate primary mind of clear light, then for such individuals, then whatever the instructions, such as these hymns of spiritual experience, are very, very clear, and and by applying these instructions in their own practices, it further and further clarifies their experiences.
Oji da dinda yimba yendu dan di awana dinda yangu yuwari di jiga sabi chakjin ruwa maluwa li sene da oji sem chamu di tamara ngondu jirwa kapsu namshi rapa ganga dagu di yuwa yendu jiga chanong dhamanda mambu jishar pena lamkan chong tapo jila lep songa yenna jiga rusa yang rama ra oji lamka yang ka tapo wada dinda ga nonga yangu yuwari wa teni kali ga rambi pena jiga nongchi thosum ga nonga kar lamba chiba mar lamba nirtaba nang lamba chadu nang yang ga oji da sem ga chornong dawo dinda jiga sem charun rogun nonga manda mambu charang ga yuwari teni zom jigilan jiga tomba nila kuwa yongi dang nyamnyang jen jiga dang nyamnyang jen ga kuwa yoba jiga dang yang chisam chamu nang jen ga jiga nangji thosum ga lam rawun chang tabo dili mara gar na chisam chamu se jide ngonde jirwa kapsu tangsang namka tabi tomba nyi ji kuwa yongi jiga na tomba nila kuwa lapar da ngiwan dhaya ga tangsang namka tabi nyam jiga sharkari ti sharang duina jiga da chi nakanang ni yonga nang jen ba dila jiga shanda sarwa nyamnyang ga tsruwa ngar meba jiga osar mabun chobar shin jilo sena songwa yandu ngar osar tomba ni ji kwa yoba di jiga padi rangwa madang te yongwa na yangu shanda gazur chenpo ji yongdi yinba yandu di manyong wardo jiga di li na ngokonda wo tangu yuwari songwa yandu li jang deda ka rang yin nyingmi samdi yin si jang langwa am choba me di jir kamsam ji samjian tam ji dang chebara ngar jing kam chukdenba nam cheba si nang ji tawsang osar dang jiwa charbi sharo si chong rinpon rawo tindran char da osar kapsa osar mabun chobar shen ji lo songwa nang ji di kamna nyam nyam mandraba chebara jan ji yang yuwa yandu de tar shar yang jiga tamarabi lamda jirwa manula jiwa rangaba yana tomba nika kuwa mengi yana chiwa osar di lamda jira ka tab niya yuwa mari oda tindago jiga kunyong jengo jiga bakchak sedingi jiga yana tirmasin dongkamba parchi hongbo nijur la gashan yongdang yongdo di tam jo jang diwa chenbu nena shiwa me desi hongbo nijur la kom diwa yandu di kapsa jiga sam chamu jingo di jirka yuwa re di tomba nyala jiga kuwa teryago nishigra osani me dingi ta miwa yinba di toha go li nana yang toha li chamdang chamna di tamma yang dechen nena yang si shiwa me se na shi songwa ta re se jiga tomba nyala kuwa yungi yana wa jiga osar mabun chobo jiga nyansur thumo ma yinba jiga yang go re se na songshaga tinda yinding.
So it says that with regards to the very subtle mind, cultivate with regards to the very subtle mind, then in generating it initially, then that it is completely kind of obstructed by the many different coarse or gross states of the mind. In order to experience that subtle mind, then it is always obstructed by the many coarse states of mind. Just like if one is going somewhere, then when the path is very narrow, full of obstructions, crowded like that, kind of the path is not very clear. Then like when one goes through the dissolution or the absorption of these coarse states of the mind, such as in the course of one's appearance, increase, and near attainment, then as with each of these states of the mind, then as the dissolution process goes on, then by that much more one is able to experience more directly the subtle state of the mind, and then by experiencing that mind, then if one has the understanding, particularly when one has the understanding of emptiness, and when one is able to apply that mind free of all these coarse states, to the understanding of to that understanding of emptiness, employing the subtle mind at the time, the mind of clear light at the time of death, to employ it towards the understanding of emptiness, then one experiences a realization of emptiness in a way much more extraordinary than ever before. One's experience of that emptiness is completely free from that darkness, or the free from the from the darkness that or the obscurations that one experienced previously in one's prior engagements. But here is known as the experiencing one's realization of emptiness, which is regarded as the clear light of the meeting of the mother and the child. When the mother meets the child, there is the kind of joy or the excitement, or like that kind of it's like when one is able to engage that kind of subtle mind to realize that kind of emptiness through undertaking the process of the dissolution of the coarse states of mind, then one experiences the clear light of the mother and meeting of the mother and the child, like that. So so in the same way, like it says that although one has the as individuals who are born of the womb, having the 6 basic constituents, in the of the desire realm, engaging in the practice of joining the 2 organs, like that, and when one does have the opportunity to generate at that time the subtle mind, but still, even one, because of the lack of the understanding of emptiness, a lack of the understanding of the emptiness. So even though one has the occasion to many times generate the subtle mind, but one is unable to bring forth that kind of exalted wisdom of the simultaneously born great bliss. So the reference is made here saying that as beings of the desire realm, who has these many opportunities, through such relationships, has many opportunities to generate the subtle mind, but due to the lack of the understanding, the awareness of the emptiness, then is unable to utilize that mind toward generating the exalted mind of the innate great bliss.
Mami Jonder Jivayana, Mamala Marta, Marati de Zamaraji, Namso Kapsum, Mami Jonder Mandava Riri, Vayandu, Jonder Sosu, Kapsa, Sosola, or Juda Kanger, Timebaji, Yangu, you are ready, T. Jonder, the Silon, Turner, that any Jenny, you captain until a tubu capsule, or then the captain, the Reggie Yanguri, the captain and the Reggie Jiguayosam, the Reggie Jiguayosam, Yamyan, Riri, Yangu, you are, Young Nojan got that Muniwala, 2 young dinner, or Juda Kangaria meeting, or that, the Dandin, Rucha, and the Jin and the Jigayan, some dental tobaji, Yangu, you are petty, Nojan, Dana, or Juda, no jit of some good Kaviananda, Jivadu Kaviananda, and Chiva Kaviananda, Chiva Shama, Chiva Nayaga Kaviana, Chiva Dusambu, Karanga, young travel, Captila, Hebdina, John and the Don, they won, the Captain, the Yangu Yosamna, or John der Silongaji, Jongayana, Yamyam Mandava Yadi, Yamyam Gotoni, Sozagai and do, Tindago Yamyam Sejidi, Malashin and the Daddy Seno, she to be around meeting. Rango Yansu Gotoni, Yanguaji and Bayandu, or that in the Yango Sena, put it on the Vashi Kulamni Song you did. So,
if you take the example, like, when the army, military, trains, whether it is training, whether it's a training for, training for warfare in the sea or warfare in the sky, while you practice, while you train for that kind of war, there are difficulties, and then when those difficulties arise, then in the course of that training, you have the various antidotes for whatever difficulties are encountered, so that when the actual war happens, when the individuals actually go to the war and difficulties are encountered, then right away, appropriately, they are completely prepared for how to counteract those kind of difficulties. So in the same way, through building on one's experiences, through building through one's practices, then building up those experiences whereby which one becomes completely prepared, whether it is on the basis of the practice of the appearance increase, near attainment, or the taking the birth, the pardo, and the rebirth, through whatever means of these types of practices, then the essential thing is that through these practices that one builds on the experience that, and then through this experience, then through these practices, then one gains the experience of an understanding which is unique through having trained in it. And such as these experiences that comes as a result of one's practices is not something that is easily expressible to others.
Chuba Ramden, some chin at the Chuba Rabji and Nan Chavala, Tobachi, Gatuchi, Sedina, or Juda, Chinchua Chukijalamji, Bardulangujalamji, Chua Chukijalamji, the Zoo John der Tershamba, Silomaji, Perna, Mamandayana, Longchi, Silomaji, Tobayana, Denita, Lonely Momala, Tuba Caps, Oda, Chigan the Tadingala, Tadu answer you, then reach out to you some Gatuing on it, Drogo you are pitting on the Chuba Rabji and Nan Chavala. So,
when defining, a Dharma practitioner of the best, medium, and the very least of practitioners, we often when we say, the best practitioner, forget about being afraid of death. They experience death with a great sense of joy. And, that is just like these example as given before, like when you have these military, when you have trained really well in what you're supposed to do and one is fully prepared, then, because of being totally prepared, so when one to go to war one is not afraid because one is completely prepared. So again here, in the course of one's practice, taking the death into the Dhammakaya, into the Pardo, into the Sambhogakaya, and the birth into the Nirmanakaya, then when one has fulfilled the full measure of these practices, completely prepared from one side, then one's totally unafraid of the experience. Not only not afraid, but has great joy or enthusiasm.
That Zogrum go cups long over Juberation, she and Nasi, long over she was Tilonga, Niva Tilonga, Tamba Tilonga, Tindaji Jonga, and other Zogrum go sunning the was and Diva and do Yana cemetery on Manjava, the cemetery on Matava and Japa Tower, or the Muba Conron Chula, Muna, was a suggestion, but most of the Shebi, Conzon Dollar, Tindago Kavla. Kaji Kalama Koma does the Memadaji town. Conzon de la Kaji Koma and a teacher of Tanyan Zidisi. Lam teacher the Gomia, you are married, you got to go yonder among the son of yonder Tilomaji Jongai and do, you was a Mavan Tobasi do. Mamawi Namno T. Tony, Shamati Lamka Tobala, Marji teacher, Kangara me para Royago, Denda when you divide and do teacher of Tanyan Zidis or that you Toago pitch down the Capili easy. Conzo John and Tujan, la teacher of temperature, Shin Johnson's. These under Mazi Jitamjin can be Ramasa Drunayon, along with Marashi by Shonga Shiko, or Jimuba Jella, Tejan, along with Marandavashi non Hosi. Yongo Rojang Nigi Nongo Long de Viminola and do Viminola, Shiba Mazi, Shiba Celon, Nua Celon, Tamba Celon, Aji and Bay and do, or that in Raga Lamit, Nisonayana, Sechi Lichula Sonja, dancing with Todi and do, she's on Adon, Nichiko, and a tender song.
So here within the instructions of these the 3 core volumes, then it says that in order to generate the primary mind of clear light, the subjective mind of Mahamudra, then for this, then initially then one must one must precede before generating this whatever prior practices are there before bringing forth the result of such a mind. Then these preliminary practices must be engaged in order to reach the resultant state of such a mind. In the completion stage yoga, then when one reaches that kind of level of the practices, then it requires the individual to enter, abide, and absorb the winds within the central channel, and to do so, fulfilling the full measures of entering, abiding, and absorption. So, such as this mind of such as this clear light mind of Mahamudra, then comes as a result of having fulfilled the requirements of all the previous paths, having fulfilled those, having trained in the previous paths completely. Likewise, Lama Tsongkhapa states, saying that then in the illumination of the 5 stages of the completion stage yoga, then that being able to dissolve the winds within the central channel and to be able to enter, abide, and dissolve the winds within the central channel is what enables the individual to be at that level of the practice. Then the individual is able to attain enlightenment within that given lifetime.
Oji da dinda yamba yendu da kongni songa daso ganga ji lami ko jala bhaji maji ni warwa bhaji ji songa niwa ngai saman za dong shinji chila sabo zorm gomtab ji tinda yongwa chi yong ri songa chi yang de ma yin ba lam ka maji ka li yana ji tamo gomya ga lam ka de ni oji da zorm ga ni ka san aywa yendu ndana dia ona de ma yin ba dershi lam di shakchen ngon de she ba la no yerjin shakja chenbo de ngon de jirya de ne tamo gombo tab ge yang go re se ne ngon de she ba la ne tamo so ni war gom gu de se oji da maji ga goni yana lam kan ro tamo gombo lam tenin ro go re se ti yamba jansan la ji malari ve da nyam gur ga na na dan da song yu wa ji za mali jang ngon de naru marwa ji kasori jan naru chutu sura gombi sakja kembo ngonde jirwa yende se da benchen naru dam ngo tamo ma yemba naru chutu de gomna oda ti tamo dandre goni gomba yenna oji da ti jizamali marangar china tena song yuarwa sakja kembo tab zong se sakjen gomya ti tab tabaga zonda wori oji da teni naru chutu gomba naru chutu gomba di gomba ta gom ni se jiba gomba zongri se tab zongdi oji shakchen gomya naru chutu gomya di ta gom ni se jiba gomba zongri se ta teni shob zong ta gom shosum ga nani shob zong se je di tabna sa mo shob zong se ta tabji nyamne da sherabji nyamne ni ga jiga jili dang ozar niga songden jiga ga lamdi shob dang re se jiga da be na ji mangmi magji jago go yuwa yana zong tembo sam da zong thamna teni tembo ji yang go yuwa ba pe te na je Tabazon, Gombazon, Shobazon, Sambuji, then you custom 100 divisions, see that zone Jinraji song on it. Then Ravazon, somebody locked the young Ayana, Driver Cossambo, Hunting Dragon, division did Totoba Yovaris, and when I do then Drago Tobaramba, you did Zonji, Jarzo Ding.
So it says that, in accordance with the Haish Yoga Tantra, you have the Father Tantra and the Mother Tantra. You have Gua Samaja, Yamantaka as Father Tantras, and you have a way of arriving, engaging in the practices of the completion stage yoga, and generating the realizations that arise out of meditation through such as these meditational data practices. Then, accordance with Mother Tantra, then it is through meditating on Tumo, the navel heat, that one is able to bring forth the subjective mind of the Mahamudra, and to denote that, then it says that in accordance with the instructions, to denote that, then it mentions the spiritual hymns of Milarepa, in accordance with the instructions in the tradition of Naropa and Marpa, then engaged in the 6 yogas of Naropa, which involves the Tumo practices. As a way of bringing forth the resultant state of the subjective mind of the Mahamudra. So here it says that you have the fortress of the meditation, which comes through the practices such as that of the 6 yogas of Naropa. Then you have the fortress of the conduct, a unifying method and wisdom. And then you have the fortress of the correct view, and then you have the fortress of accomplishment, which is the fortress of the accomplishment is whereby which one is able to take the 3 bodies into the path of being able to take the 3 bodies into the path, and thereby attain the 3 Buddha bodies.
Oji da dinda yamba yandu juda jita mala rambu jiga mara gor sanga duna zong juwu di mara rambi long na da lam dropa ramba dinda yan songa chi song jen ti tamu atong si ngao jo jang chirin zi la si ta chi tang ni ji tamu atong si ya mashi wa tigli si ya dinda go shili mandra wa yu si jiti ta tan tan dana ma jika liga tamu atong si duna jiga tamu di yiki atong ji mara gombo ten ni o jiga da dinda go zong chenpo jilan ya dinda go ngao jo yuwa yendu dinda go go ni ngao jun zi kandu si na te jigdang te dang tamba chuji sabandu di song na yang naru chudu shi shi tu na mala yen chi teli me se jigda jaga tu chen so kanga la men tinda tau yuwa mari yu ji yuwa ri de po kangchen ko jong la o jigda tamo ma yen ban jigda naru men ngao te so o jigda kari se ko tani song na mara sar tu tsik yung anda wo yin ba yen du o jigda mala yen chi teli me se na ngao jun zi a chi.
So in this way, Milarepa, in his hymns of spiritual experience, then states these 4 fortresses as a graduated way in which one can accomplish the path. These 4 fortresses. So whether it is involving what is known as the indestructible drop or the short R in the through the cultivation of the meditational practices of the Tumo in accordance with the Mother Tantra traditions. So these instructions that are clarified in the clarified in the practice known as the 6 yogas of Naropa, or in accordance with the instructions of Naropa Marpa, like that. Although previously there isn't, even though there wasn't such a title as the 6 yogas of Naropa in the past, before Naropa, even though there wasn't a title like that, but in the practices of the great Mahasiddhas, they already had all of these practices, except that later on, from the time of Milarepa and so forth, that it came to be known. Sometimes when praising this text, there says before Milarepa this wasn't there, this practice wasn't there, it only started from there. But although in that kind of presentation under such title might not have been there prior to Milarepa, but those practices were already there in the instructions of the Mahasiddhas, except in that kind of format presented under those titles, then started from such as these teachers.
Ojida dinda yimba yendu dinda jigdan teni yon ji gambo as the Jidamala Rinpoche Mara Lomi so Samyo Banani so ji yengu yuari de tambo Jidam Gambo Mala Rinpoche Marandana Cherva Kapsa ji Yermar ji Tavanda ti Mara Lenda sound the Gambo Yangala ji Yama Samji Jangala ji Karase go and Tala Didina Marji Maloba Dingen the Tinda Tembu use in Malala Shuyuari Shuduna Jidam Mali or Jidati Yabo Ridi Tamu Lamji Mondo Senate we Goyago Yamnengo Tiva Tamusi Jiti Teli Hakiwa Marisena or that any Maraji Gambo ala Tamu of June no Tindoni Gambo Tamu Yamjino Goni on Taba computers on Luji or Vatinda in Bayandundana G Gambo Vijan Tamara Tamu Gombe Nixon on the Jervas or Chanda Mong Osi Tinago and Bang Uding.
So Jusun Gombawa, who is one of the 3 main disciples of Milarepa, then one time visited Milarepa to clarify the question, to have a period of question and answer with Milarepa. And in the course of that particular encounter, Gamboba remarked saying how he had developed a very stable concentration, that for periods 3, 4, 5 days, he could stay in a meditative concentration immovably. Then when Gamboba said this, then Milarepa remarked saying that more than this, more extraordinary is the practice of the tumo, the inner navel heat, and so Milarepa praised this practice, and on the basis of this, praising this practice, then instructed Gamboba in the practice of tumo, and based on those instructions, then Gamboba was able to generate the innate primordial mind of clear light.
Oji that in the Bayan that in Regime Rambaji Pontuna song, that day and then the ten Saja Jambo, Yerjan Saja Jambo, Gombala, Tautambo Konda Maji, Lamika, Onju, that Zawar Togo, you are it in the Bayan do, Onja Namda, Toba, Onja Namda, Toti, is a kilon what I'm to the surgeon, the song, Titani, Cheram, Gumgo, you are what in Rayan do, Chezavadan. Tamo Lamla Joma Sajan Gudi Kapili is in Ojuda, Konzo Tambu Legion, Remjiva, temperature, Siji, Ojuda, Jingama Chichera Siji, Mongo Lintrojan, Ojuda, Jesov Toaju and Chichera, Lam Convoniga, Chicher de Yoma, you are married, Chicher de Yomanda, Yomanda Wood, when I was there, Mabon Toseduna, the Madi don't put the new year Rambo Matu Aji, the new marriage, Yamden Zumba, to Gatu Chimbuji and Guari, Yam the Chicher than Zumba, Petin or just Chicher mental. Tayote Mayan Berlin, to Jesok Masang it in Diana, you got Rembaji Gungores and Conzo Tambu Legion, Remjiva, temperature, she's on chance.
So, So it says that in order to generate the subjective mind of a Mahamudra, then as stated before, initially, then one must receive the four pure initiations into any of the deities of the highest yoga tantra, live in observing purely all the pledges and vows and commitments of this practice, and on the basis of this engage in the generation and completion stage yoga practices. So all this is done on the basis of having already trained in the general or the common path. So there is a phrase which says, simultaneous engagement of all, simultaneous engagement of the paths. In order to engage, there is no such thing as in being able to engage in all the varying paths simultaneously. But particularly as beginners on the path, then all of the paths has to be trained in or engaged in a graduated manner, like that. But the reference to the simultaneous engagement of the path, then for those of higher realizations who go through the experience of the clear light, which is a clear light, which is likened to the meeting of the mother and the son. Like the mother and the child that has not met for a long time, but they've sought each other, haven't met for a long time, and then when initially they meet up, the mother and child, initially there is a great joy in seeing. Upon seeing each other like that, so such as this term referring to the simultaneous engagement of the paths, here referred to such states of clear light, such states of clear light of or likened to the meeting of the mother and child.
That in a Bayandu, she's on Konzon Dola, the Ramjiva Tani John Zido, Sita, Tenitan Dum Davon, you don't do on Duna, Tina Lam di Trupchen Parcheresi, or you that in the Jagago Trupchen Parchiva, Lami Kajidi Sosu, Jida Paji and a Paji Gon to Zoshi, Maji and a Maji Gon to Zoshuna, the Angela on Shiba Dansi, Tamara, Hongo Goni, Jerum Dorum Gumcha and Changchen, the Hongo Goni, Shugo, you and do, remember what you know, Dambo on the shoot, any times on Dombas on T, Tani Lam Remi Gongo, you are easy. Te Yamba Mazi, Chiji Sab and Dijon, what you done, dinner song you are about. Naru Dava, Honker, down Remji Chuji, so and the years in a Jizan Naru, Chosura de la, or Jia Tomer, Jia Honker Gonin Changenda, or Tebachi, Tiani Cherum down Zoromani Gomyadi, Lamji, so and Doku, you are listening a song you are and do, she's on last.
So in the case of an individual engaging in the graduated generation of the paths, then initially must be initiated into the highest yoga tantras, either in the father tantra or the mother tantra, and then these initiations is what empowers you or permits you to engage in the practices of the two stages, the generation and completion stage. One engages in these practices on the basis of keeping pure all the pledges and commitments of these initiations. So, here it says, in accordance with the tradition of the Venerable Naropa, then it is through, one engages in these graduated stages of the practice through initiation, getting the permission into the practice, and then engaging in the practices of the two stages based on observing all the vows and commitments. So, the principal practice here is the practice of the two stages.
Oh, that in the that in the young Jisan Jijanzi, the Malaramojimara, Sangor Chinaya, Mangasir ti so nyenshi na puchola la juji karvayo. Jigo hondan shanlap, Nigo hondan shanlap, Samu nyenji damgo shan, she song ichirosi. Or Juda, Jitamala Ramboji, Congo, Homatazo, Charna, Damgo, Gosi, Tindra, Sheba, Sena, Chula, Hachuga, Karavachin, Dus, Yena, Yonchil, Hajuji, Karavayona, Chilam, Gomiasi, Jiti, Toman, and Jibu, Gunda, what the Honshi Gogoris, Hon Juda, Shanlav Yongoris, Shanlav Yonga, or Juda, Shanlav Honda Jatini, Rambani Poti, Gomgo, Yuari, and Samu Nyanji, Damotani, Jenny Shangoyas, and Songs of Atiti. Ti Ganga go Shochin Goya go Savati Tomara Honshu, Ti Tani Tamsudan Dombason, or that any thing Changin the Toba good Tani Rimji, Cheram the Gum, Tani Tom Gomya, remember what in the Yango Senate, that's on I choose.
And in the case of Joseph Miller, it's the same. When the disciples approach Milarepa for instructions, then Milarepa, Milarepa too instructed that one needs first to have the blessing or the fortune of the initiation, and if one receives the initiation, then one becomes the recipient of the blessings of these practices, and and through these blessings, then one can engage in the practices of the two stages, enabling one to engage in the profound practices of the Mahamudra. So, like that, in engaging in these practices, the root. How one establishes the roots of these practices is through receiving the initiations, which gives us the permission and which renders us the blessings, and one becomes the one becomes the suitable receptacle of these practices through living purely in the pleasures and the vows, and on the basis of this, when one engages in the generation and completion stage yoga practice, and that is what directs us on the path of generating the primordial mind.
Domsum Ravi said, this happened to the song in Guariti, Japana, Thunder, Domsum Ravi Lee Jones, Meji Shakja, Chembo, de only John Ichidansin. What is happened to the Congo, to Gomiago, Shakin, de Karazago, to Jachembojiga, you are a Ketaga, you are a Didi, Koni Jomari Shina, to Tamara, Wanshin, Changin, to go to any John and only John Ichidan. Or that Rambani, Tanzan Lisi, that Chiram Gomto Tenali John Ranjango Ishi and the she could have said Tamchi Gomba Mantamba Mibayanosi, or that Indago Guni, or Jidada Tony, Yugi Tony, Jindosako Shakjan, Moji Shakjan, Gombanon, and Moji Shakjan, Gomli Gomtown, Ravoti, Rambatinda Jian Goris, and a song I imbat in the Chiji.
And likewise, Sakya Pandita also concurs, saying that where does one come to the to come to the practice of the Mahamudra is through the initiation, and although this practice is very extensive and very well known, yet one can come to it through only through having received the initiation. And through receiving the initiation, then one is able to engage in the, in the practices of the two stages of the generation and completion stage yogas, and so like that. Rinpoche also mentioned another great master who also concurs, arriving at the practice of the Mahamudra through initiations and so forth. So basically, in order to engage in the Mahamudra practice, you have, as stated before, you have the Sutra Mahamudra and the Tantric Mahamudra. In order to come to the practices of the Tantric Mahamudra, then this is the stages in which one should make the progress.
Oji that in a bayan do that, you quorum the what you get chijunda when you got one to sound that, then he jenny, then those up you Chakchen Gomya, teach a dingy teeth and you calico and being no shop Chakchen de Gungua, or that dear imagine the song and do done the need done and Duluji, Chakchen Chiro the Tombi Charasi, then Dulico Chakchen Gomli Gom down, Jean Carrera, Tembari, T shirt, Yanji Carasego. Oji that somber time just in at Indrago, Chakchen Javas on Ravana, Oji that Titon cheated and this on you are Watan and Duluji, Chakchen Chiro the Tombi, Hari on Tam Java, sit and the Rachu Tomgay and Dragons and a Tam Java 30, and that Chakchen Savarona, Moma Jindi and Disam Gisena, or that Chakchen Gomya, the Uncle Chakchen Gomli Gomdan, Chakchen on the Jean on the Tajiga Tony Shua, the Sola 10 you Gomli Gomdan in Radius, Yena on Gomli Gomdan, Jivati on a Marsanguyans, the Drago Jedena and Dolico Chakchen Gomya, the Chugo, you and do, the Moma, Margin is the Moma, the Dolico Chakchen Gomya, Jean de Carreras, and I am Jindi Disam Latin, go you and do, Moma Jindi Disam Jing with Antonio Gonzer de Sena. Or Yam Tamba Jidumadi Jiva, Dandy Nyota, or that Duadi Jetomba Yandu Tis and Boom with Tony Jiramba Gomzer de, or Judat and Dolico Mare Chakchen Gombe, Jean de Yam Jinde Disam Sena to move on you ding.
So, so in this way, having clarified the way in which one goes, engages in the practice of the Mahamudra, stating, the Sutra Mahamudra, Tantra Mahamudra, and how to approach Tantra Mahamudra. Then this is followed by explaining the practices of the Mahamudra in the context of the Sutra, in order to engage in the practices of the Tantric Mahamudra. Then one must build the foundation in having understood the presentation of the Sutra, having trained in the graduated practices of the Sutra Mahamudra. And so this is what one relies on. So the sources for the Sutra Mahamudra is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So here, referring to the root text, it says the former refers to the ways of meditating on voidness as directly indicated in the expanded, intermediate, and the brief Prajnaparamita Sutras. So the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the expanded version has 100,000 stanzas. The intermediate version has 20,000 stanzas, and the brief version of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras has 8,000 sutras. So these are the resources, the sources, from which the instructions of the practice of the Sutra Mahamudra is based on.
Oji that in Rayan Bayan, the Shakjan Gajan is on with that on your concert in the Legion, but Tarila making bunch of letter songs and Angobo letter go, Jigan Dojako, Shakjan Gomia, Shakjan Gomiati, or Engineer Disseminate song at Tili Labo, Tarolam, you are Maris songs on this in Savati, that day on and Donna de Gombajan. In the Saudi Chamber, trouble, there's something or to ship us, Jidela, me songs and Jews, and or that in Rayan Bay and do that, then in Doluka, Yerishakin Chamber, Gombala, Gomba de la, that trust that you are powder, they need something more to be shared, Jidela Lama, Dambalama, Goma, Jabana, Dambalama, Gomba was on Noja, then in Dragons and a somber Tamjaji, that Savati and Bay and do she chat the that you don't in Dream.
So this particular verse is also the author's commitment to composing the instructions on the instructions as to how one may meditate on the Sutra Mahamudra. So he says that the supremely realized Arya Nagarjuna has said that except for this, there is no other pathway of mind leading to liberation. Here I shall give instruction on Mahamudra in accordance with his intentions and discuss the methods that lead you to recognize the mind in keeping with the exposition of the lineage masters.
Ojida Dina Yamay and that Tabati John, Tidon, Dreon Duna, Shisha, the Chagja Jambo, Gomserla, Nili, Moman, Duligi, Gomlina, Dashama, Noluji Gomser, the Nulukan, the song, Sunny Genie in his song. Gomser, Yam Jinda, the Samjin within Tonya Taba, Sheriff Gomser, Yendi, then Taba Samgi is the Yadudan Ranger, Taba Jambo Samgi, Lamgo Soction, the Warris, and so Damba Jerva Yamla, Motion, send the Mayim, but Terradra Lam, Rimantan by Jim, Majim Ponjava Ludwig, Sanji, Ponjava Ludwig, Pona Son Uvaris, and Papa Ludwig, Jean de Tron, Ranson. Sanji Ranson, Jinam Danya Tunam Jing eating, but Terralam, the junior Yandang Meiji, Shavarang is in the what you done over the Jean Juna, the engine, those two in Guivari. Those who can know that you Tabasam Gilam Joyala, Yum Generate some somewhat till no jungle telly jumble and you are Marisi, somewhat the concert down a song you are in a song.
So, in meditating on Mahamudra, then you have you're meditating on Mahamudra in the sutra way, which will be explained first, and then meditating on the Mahamudra in the tantric way, in accordance with the tantric traditions, which will be explained later. So, as stated here, then the one path to liberation for those on the hearer's path or on the Shravaka path or the Pratyeka path or the Arya Bodhisattva's path, then there is only one path for all of these three vehicles. There is just this one path to liberation, which is the path. Based on the teachings of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, based on the expanded, intermediate, and the abbreviated, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So here it says that this particular quotation is taken from one of the writings of Nagarjuna, and it is a quotation from one of the sutras, saying that except for this, which is the perfection of wisdom, emptiness, then there is no other pathway of mind leading to liberation.
Ojina, Dina Yambayandu, no, that not the Zomara concert on that Tirmasi, what you done, Dojoni Lam Gomyati, engineer the Zemison, no, only Lam Gomyati, Dojakalam Gombati, Jedenji, Titan, Moji Nomba Tam, the Chiram down to Ramsage, Novalami Koti, Nomba Matam, Yandu, Tirmasi, Durji Tapala on Delhi Jamba down Hopper. Tabiva made the Jitan Savanjis, Sabandison, Parurishan down, Song of La Tabiva Shiba Missy, Parshango, Johnny Sonja Tabadon, Song of Johnny Sonja Tavanila, Chebrio Marisi, Parurishan, Tutorly, Nalopatava, Yunano, Tati, Tuajan dangerous. Then you got Cheberji, you are not Paru de Chamba, Jeparu de Chamba Taba, and those only Shiba Tabatili, Labaji, Yona. Tabati Tua Gentil, Hajan the Jerdivaris and a song. Tati Tua Gendanger, Tudray and Chebramichi on Atarosi, that in Goni Dribzang.
So it says that when engaging in the the practices of Mahamudra, then one does so beginning with the instructions that one receives from the sutra presentation, and then to this instruction, then one adds on the additional instructions that one receives in accordance with the highest yoga tantras through the practice of the 2 generation stage yogas. But from the point of view from the side of the object emptiness, with regards to the view of emptiness, then whether it is in the sutra or whether it is in the tantra, then there is no difference at all. In the presentation of the view, whether in the context of the sutra or Tantra, one cannot find more, more extraordinary information in Tantra. One cannot find that. In the presentation of the view, then it is the same. And if when one studies the 6 perfections in the sutra, and when one studies the view in the sutra, and whatever view is presented in the Tantra, with regards to the view, there is no difference. And if anyone says that there's more extra information on emptiness in the context of Tantra, then that is just a fabrication.
Ngidon driver, Jerry Lontan, Gombola Duji, Shanti Surshivasi, or then Ngidon Tombani, Don Driadi, Javaron, Goma Lontan, some Tombani, Don de Drivala, Maobana, the Gana Pardin Chitawa, Timon the Simbo Batisina, or you that Gobola Drip de Marlontan, Gosson Yuarua, Nidon Tombani Kurtayala, Gobola Dusi, Tendajumal, Hoson in Jongori Tati, Jamajian the Sigurity, Jamajian Gina, Tison Zavati, and Siguris and Lontan Yuati, and Bayandu. Gobola Dripji, Shanti Surshiva, or that Jinjunamji, Noni on Ju, Champion Telang or Junzena. Tabu Kurdi, Sarchu Jivayana, Gombola Duku Jinongo, but then Davatabada, Gombola Duku Homari, or that Tin Amiga Sanjavati, Yeshiva Teni, Tavatelam, Guguri Mata, Telijan, Maris and Songa and Dundana, Jinjunamji Noni, Ju Chambusi, Tonyo Congo, Toxina, Tijan Shabi, Long Tanja, Chunya Damba, Zubai, Little Homa, Datoi, Telijaba, Dambala, Sanji Oji, Janda Mersen, or Juda, Tombania, Tondunda, Yuayana. Karugo Guni Marjizan Rangurisena, Tijanabas Hanjigo Mara Chunya Tombanya Gaton, Monsam the Zuzavati, that Ngobola Drusin and the Regin Jangorisi, or that Loma Davatapata, Tini Jidding Ego Dangote, Ti Yamle Jiva Guni, Jiva Tombanya Gungori Mata, Dili and the Yuamaris in Marachu Champion in Rasanjangis.
So, with regards to the definitive meaning of emptiness, the profound emptiness, then in order to come to that profound meaning of emptiness, the definitive meaning of emptiness, then one should rely on the instructions of Nagarjuna, whose coming was already prophesied by the Buddha, saying is in this time frame from this part of India. So, rely on the instructions of Nagarjuna and his spiritual disciple, Chandrakirti. And so, likewise, then, Lama Atisha also states, saying that in order to come to the correct view of emptiness, then, there is no greater instructions to follow other than the instructions of Nagarjuna and his disciples. Chandrakirti, in order to come to that kind of definitive meaning of the profound emptiness.
Ojuda Dinda Yambayandu, Ojuda Chizomba Tar Papa Gomba, you Davi Travajan, the Soja Chambu Trap out the Esi, Dan Dolico Soja Chambu Trap out, that you Samji Mutru Sheba, Sir, Kidabjitamba, Ramache, Chanabji Jaba, Jabana Demba, Burden Lama Damba, Song or Rambuji Tavajan Sena, or you Zabandu the song goes, Sarchi Lamdi, Sijit Sonayon, to Loduko Loma, Dataka Song, Tin Hojungo Teni, Tavatan, Buguris, and a song of you, but that Tin Hojan. So, in order to, in order to get the instructions for the Mahamudra, then one should rely on the commentary by Chandrakirti in order to come to the recognition of one's mind. And furthermore, Sakya Pandita, in the presentation of Lamde, the paths and their results, then also makes the same reference to seeking the guidelines of the instructions of Chandrakirti as a way of means to to generate the practice of the Mahamudra. Oji da dina juji da dini dan do dion dina ona ji charan durten sogya chembo hisha shina hasi oda de yana da ji karse go doni mariam jine disam lateni gombari oda ngoni ji dinda go to chengo yang sozu da sola teni gomba yana da sogya chembo gombya se je di kandi ji gom go re sena gom go re sia ji da sogya chembo se je di men di do kona ten yuari sena da di to go nin samjar da di no dingen the jabo se je dan the town the dingen the jabo li oji chunam kan ji rangje sagja di shi somba taras chu dam ji ga rangje de tomba ni de yin ba yin de yer tomba ni de yer sagja chembo de yer de jebo yer jen go lu de yer jen sagja chembo yin ba yin de oda ni no dingen the jabo na sagjen se je den ga go ni re se ne de ji ji se sagjen se ji de me sarva ji ta ya ma yin ba do rang na yang yu de yu ba yin de shi somba tar chu dam ji rangje tomba ni ne sagja dang di tawna si yir shakja di tomba nyi di toba yana gaba am kurba tamji li mara rungi yinba yandu churbi chenpo am odan chakdi shakja chenpo si Mahamudra si ji di chenpo dang chak yanlu yantang di odan chenpo chakdang tsenmi dang shiso songli chiru si dindaga guni me tangzawa songzang.
So the Mahamudra, which is to be meditated upon, then where do we derive this practice from? Where do we base this practice on? Is in the sutra, which is known as the sutra, which is the king of the concentrations. Within that, then it states saying that the nature of all phenomena is emptiness, and that that is the object emptiness. And that is the mudra or the seal, that phenomena by nature being empty is the mudra, and then the mind which realizes that is the subjective mind of Mahamudra. So when one generates this mind, then this is the mind which enables us to be liberated out of cyclic existence. And when we talk about the Maha or the greatness refers to that subjective mind of Mahamudra, which enables the liberation out of cyclic existence. The mudra or the seal refers to the nature of phenomena being empty.
Hoji da dinda yinba yindu da shakja chenpu tsen men dablin dakdang dinda chigdang da dinda go goni chigda tangni hoji dogo zhang di mariyam jinren di samdang nga go zhang di tiba dedan si jidang oda jidda chiwa dinda ni yinba yindu da yini shakjen gomli gomdang di mara sangyongwa yindu da di sangya di thangmara chigi ngali kong di chiwa da mara sangyong go yuwari da yinba yindu da no taba tenpa la si diwa joji jang se ngar shetok mabi diwa se na ji rig mandaba joji jang arwa tambo sab diwa je se je diwa jo ri la yerkan da wo ji no tangka kanga diwa na joji yo re de yina yang ji song ge song tang mandaba re ma ta de lam dob go ni o jin khurwali do ta sang ji kwang bang to ya di chi ba yin ding ge song yo re diwa joji jang number do river Tonga Tara Chakchenji, Yesser Tribunta, Tom Moyon, Chakchenji, Metan, Zubo Kanjanga Johnny and I, Chulu Sozu Mara, Dela Memra, Mabota, Carson Tony Chuan, Manjin Yami, Lula Maratochensi, Kajuka Lula Chakchensi, Sarchi Lula Lamdisi, Gilgo Moni, Deton Yermisia, Vemi Tavasia, Mamadavachi, Tawari, Tondo Chiba in the Varisena. Trong Moyon, Divers on Jew, Sabja Chambo, Toshit and Tonga Temba, Donsi, that the nature Damba Namji, Lugazon Tatawa, number you are and Kiwi Shibasi, or that day congat, Natondo Chibaji and do that Tindago Tony Shakin, Siji de Maragoli Gomton, Tonga Rambanda, what they can issue and a song of ding.
So when we look at how we have derived the title of the Mahamudra, then this is how we have derived the title. But what the practices which are signified in that title is already there. is already there in the presentation of the Prajnaparamita, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and in accordance with the Tantra, then you have the 7 texts of the Mahasiddhas and the 3 core volumes within which one finds the instructions, meditation instructions on the Mahamudra. So even though even though in amongst the various Buddhist schools, you have 4 main Buddhist schools, and then they sub-branch into 18 different schools. But although you have these many different schools of thought, yet in having the goal of enlightenment, liberation, enlightenment, and and the way in which they accomplish these goals. In that respect, then it is the same, except that when you make titles, then you make all these different titles, just like as stated before. When we take the topic of Mahamudra, then in accordance with the Nyingma tradition, then it is known as Dzogchen, the Great Completion. And then when you take it in the Kagyu context, it is known as Mahamudra, the Great Seal. And then in accordance with the Sakya, it is known as the paths and their results. And in accordance with the Gelugpa tradition, then it is known as the indivisible bliss and emptiness, or in the way of the Madhya or the Madhyamika view. So although one may have these varying titles or many different classifications, but it's in the goal that it seeks and the path that it accomplishes, then it is the same.
Dinda go Mara Shaktin go Rambanda, Memanda, Tagna, Rambanda, what the Guni, Tunda, Kuna, Song, and do Savaron, Dandana, Tanjuji, your government, Nadero, Yiki, Shishi, Julu, Zotienda. The Mita, Last of us, Susan, or Mona, Young, we don't know the Lam Kitchen, Yamno Janji, and Anjurishina, Gomba, Children, Bavas, and that. Or you that, you say you did, or you done the on a Mariuari, you Yami Gambo, Neshakin, Gomi, Gomdan, the Lanky Children say you do. Young dear on you got to go, you Shakin government say you did. Don't say you are the way in Dingy. A dumbo deal and you are the government said you do shouting. That's somebody shouting, not dancing, you did somebody in Dingy. Or that in the cola on Ronium go cruise you did Javati in Dingy. Then not there Ronium, Yuki, younger shouting Goyati, or you read that drunker, don't put on you as somebody, never the particular by. Or that then she said you did. Or you done the Garzigo Jugatamba Jagarapatamba, Dambi song, Marashishi Gomni, Gomli Gomtandi, that to what they ending. That you said you did, or you done Majulaji Romani, Jedi, Choton Goni, Changchen Gomiasena, that day, Joyaka did it, Damba ending. That Jebadi, Manjanyamil, Dzogchen said you did ending. Or that any Gavadi, that Mazugilu Jona, Dosho never meet that song Goyari. Mozoni did on his maybe she said that song at the Bay and do that, don't send a Goyo and do a meet that last of us. Social member of Mabuta, you are did on down Babsanda, Yamna Jango, Namjura, Chico, Toshim Gigi, Derry on a children, but you are listeners. That's about the tron, that you don't in the name of imagine the song Goyari.
So in this way, although one may have many titles to Mahamudra, but for a practitioner, then it all boils down to the same point. So this is what is mentioned here in the root text, which says, from the point of view of individually ascribed names, there are numerous traditions, such as those of the innate or simultaneously arising as merged in accordance with the Gamboba tradition, and the amulet box possessing the 5, the 6 spheres of equal taste, the 4 syllables, the pacifier in accordance with the tradition of Pathamba Sangye, and the object to be cut off in accordance with the practice of Machi Lapki Domas Che, the right slaying the ego or cutting off, and Dzogchen, the great completion in Mahamudra in the Nyingma tradition, and the discursive Madhyamika view, which refers to the Gelupa's Sutra Mahamudra, and the Tantric Mahamudra in the Gelupa tradition then is titled as the Transcendental Wisdom of the Non-Dual Bliss and Emptiness. So, and so on. So like this, one may have, numerous names ascribed, but nevertheless, when scrutinized by a yogi, learned in scripture and logic and experienced in meditation, their definitive meanings are all seen to come to the same intended point.
Hoji dati naga savati dati naga goni tong dati rivago da savatong savati ririna maraji chiwa tamba sosun tseni muino hoji da shoktengo kurde mara songyongwa yandu gomba chitamba chi chiwa wo si teon ji gambo wana si tan chi gaji gongde jina gambo bi songya chi dati auzuna kidu chongwa nanjurga songya di kaba masi jitengu yuwari ti aoni hoji ndokong jiten gombu jiga mara yang dana yang ne karse go ngaden sijita tenda go ramba jigda o jigda teni somba jari go mara song jida ta di gaji go sana jinra yu di wa yendu da tambo di da gambo wa song di song duna de ji gambo wa na chutu ngaden si je tangka chutu si ti ngaden se na song da len ji ji yor ji go ne len ji ji yor ka ma se ji len ji ji yor de yang go wa len ji ji yor ji go ne lo ma chong ran de ba li si da len ji ji yor se je di o ji dan di nyami gambo wa go ji shak chen go sa wan da wo ji ga song de ni sa wan da la yi ki so so ji dan lo sa bi ga se go da ri lo sa ba si ji man da bo rong ri di yin na yong yi ki ndam da ma bo ji wa ri di wa yin du yi ki so so ndam ga shi nding na yong samnya lan ji ji ba chu ji ko se na ji da chuko rango ngo da chuki lab se ji chuki o se ji o ji da dinda go goni ji chechi jala jan da o da song ja yin du samnya se ji da sam chandan thamo di tomba ni gomya di da lan ji ji ba chu ji ko se ne me da ya ji teni da ji shindan trago long sam dramo de la nam tang drama drama bo ji chong yong wa di nam tang len ji ji wa chuki love se na ji be na jamzo jembo yana jamzo jembo khorang go ngo di ja chi la ten sa ba ji yin di wa ri ti che chun da wo de la ji love go lam chen da wo chi ni chi de je de ma yong go di wa chi wa yin du da chu ji ko chuki love se na ni da no wa len ji ji wa se je Noa di Zonge Nasabo, Noa Ji Chara Yendu, Shendan Trava, Nonsam Tramo de la, Dal Henji Jiva Chuki Osenada, Oda Chuki Osenda Wontoya, that Dini Nonsam Yerme Seduna, some Rango Woda, some La Zonge Kon Nonayon, or that some Korango Zonge Noya, di some Korango Rangi, Shikanda Wola, Shik Diva Yendu, Nonsam Yerme, Henji Jiva Way. That she would tea Tsukaju don't de or Juda Muki don Shala Sori Goni, Mondo Jura Dance in the or that Juti Jawotela, Shakchengo, Mondo Jura Dance in Mendaka Ding.
So when we take the what is known as the simultaneously arising as merged tradition, in accordance with the instructions of Gampopa. So in this tradition, then you have masters like that of Gampopa, Kedu Kyung, Dukhan, Jiten Gombo, and there are 4 main masters whose writings are attributed to being valid sources of instructions on the Mahamudra. So with regards to this practice, then you know, as a way of meditating on the Mahamudra, then Rinpoche, meditating how to engage in the practice of the Mahamudra by focusing on these 4 characteristics. You know, taking the, you know, Rinpoche Thambode, the Kechu Shibi Thambode, same time.
Ori Chejuji, Nanga, Tambodi, the Semniel and Jujivasi, some Koran de Mara, Nimar Hachini, Marchon Divaju, Jugarzago, Majua, Nimani, Ranjango, Yudivachi, and Bayandu, Semniel and Jujiva, Chujikose, Chukumama, Maridi, Chukadan, you ding Chani, Chujikosen and Jayachi.
So, you know, taking the primordial. The innate primordial mind, you know, although this is not the actual Dhammakaya, you know, it is like the Dhammakaya, you know, primordial, you know, self-arisen, like Ranju, you know, without creation, and then now sangin khashawd.
Ori daddy Namdadi Chukila, Noah Naji, some Koronla, Noah Nasaba, Zonge Nasaba, Noaji Chariadi, Chuki Osen.
And then whatever appearances arise in that mind is what is known as a you know, the good or bad appearances that arise within the mind as being like the you know, the rays of that Dhammakaya. And
the Orida Garzago, Javadi, no, some said with Indago, some new some tramos in a what you Yurjan Tramo de la Semga Noaji Jonga, no Jaji Jonga, they don't know Jajonga with some Coroni, Yurjan by and do Marati, Nigamara, Noa, don't some Nigang, Yermi the Javadi and Jivas in a metazang.
And in a, you know, the referring to the mind as being innate and indivisible. You know, this
that Hajivas in a that some Koran de Mar Zomagua, Tamboni, Ranjang, you are in the Chuji Kadandava. That Dela Haji the Jiva, Namtang Damada Shariadi, Chuki Lambda Windingi. What you done, Noa Dela, Noa, Zong and Asaba Sharadi, Chuki Unda, Ondon about as a child you are dingy. That in Raga, Noa, some Koran, no Sago, some Korani, and more year me by you. Yimba and do that day, no, some year me had Chivas and Niganyam the journal.
So, this, you know, this primordial mind being referred to as like the, you know, like the Dhammakaya. It's not the Dhammakaya, but like the Dhammakaya in the that in the context that it you know, that it is there primordially the you know, the this subtle mind, this very subtle wind and mind that is it is like the Dhammakaya in the sense that it is there without creation, you know, naturally abiding. And so whatever conceptual minds arise to that mind, you know, arise in that mind are like the waves. And so the conceptual all of the conceptual thoughts are like the waves of that Dhammakaya, and whatever appearances occur to the mind is you know, good or bad. Those are like the light rays of that Dhammakaya, and the indivisibility because you have the subject and object relationship, the appearance, the outer appearance, and the inner mind experiencing that, experiencing that appearance, then you have the indivisibility of that Dhammakaya, like that. So to this primordial mind, primordial mind of clear light, then giving it the name of the Dhamma, giving it the name of Dhammakaya, but it is not the actual Dhammakaya. So it is like Dhammakaya in that context.
Zongi Jindaji Jawadi Tombo Yeni Noa Jondi Yuayandu Chuki Odandava. Oda Tindago Yerno Nasabadan Nasaba no Sim Koroni Yerjen Yiga Mo Yermebadi Tombo Yeni Mo Yermi Yangi Yuayandu Oda no Sim Yermi Hajiba. Tindajigo Mara Kuanda Lemba Tindajigo Tony Mundu Jura Jedensi Oda Tindaji Mundu Nani Mundu Tadikarambanda, what de la Shakin Goya Garamba de la T Jedi Maraji Kuanda which our Tani Jenny or that we go using this on.
So these understanding these 4 points are regarded as the 4 preliminary practice prior to the engagement in the practice of the Mahamudra in the tradition of the simultaneously arising as merged. So like the Dhammakaya, which is there uncreated from the very beginning, then one's mind primordial. The mind, one's primordial mind of clear light is there from the from the very beginning, uncreated, and what it also this one's mind which experiences all of these conceptual thoughts are like the waves, like the waves, ocean waves. Waves of that Dhammakaya, and that whatever appearances, these appearances that are there from, that occur from, from very beginning. So good and bad appearances, then they are like the rays of that Dhammakaya. And then when one experiences, external objects and the internal mind experiencing the appearances, is the indivisibility of the the subtle wind and the subtle mind.
Hoji da dinda ngoni da ngondu yura dadikaramba yeden de koati ten teni den yeni nguje ki chakchen ngoto ya go ngoto namba ni se ji ji andeng da namba ni da ti ji ni ngoto namba ni ge ngoto bo go ni chakchen de ngon thobo go de ni ji ni nyam nyam go ji nyong tak nyong zur manda ji jongwa yendu ji se nyam nyam no tak de jongwa di ti sambu ngoto ni go ni nyam nyam go no di thak de rong nyong la kom di yo ba ti sam ji ti sam chebo go ni o ji da di ti sam che ya di ngoto chirdang go ji sangro kang dang kang yena ti la ngoto de dang de go si ji ti ngoto che dang chang ra ji yin ba yendu ti che dang chang xian se da ngui je ni bo de ngoto ni bo de da je ni xu yang gui wa.
So with every instruction that one receives, you have the preliminary instructions and the actual instructions. These 4 points are like the preliminary instructions to the actual recognition of the Mahamudra. So the actual point of the actual the actual introduction to that Mahamudra is presented in these two aspects. Introducing one to the Mahamudra by way of these two aspects, and on the basis of these, on the basis of this recognition, then this introduction, then one goes through the experience. One goes through the experiences and the concordant appearances that arise out of those experiences.
So Tandi ngok sheni dang hong dang se je de lo chi ko nang yer de la sheni gom ya jagom de se chi de ni wa jagom de ji ngi yer la tong ba nyi ngi we cha ni lo chi ko yer la she la ka nyam le ni gan dong gwa chi yen ba yen du ta ngui je ngon tro ya di she lang ni gom bu ten ni ngon tro gong ni chak chen de.
So the two introductions are the introduction to the calm abiding and the special insight. So as stated before, then on the basis of being introduced to these two instructions in accordance with the sutra, then you have two separate minds. One engaging in the calm abiding, and another mind engaging in the special insight. Then, accordance with the tantra, then you have one mind engaging in both the calm abiding and the special insight. So, while the mind is engaged in that single pointed concentration, then what it ascertains, what it should be ascertaining, while in that single point of concentration, is ascertaining emptiness.
So the
with regards to the different presentation of on the topic of Mahamudra, but the actual main body of the practice really has to do with meditating on calm abiding and the special insight.
Or you daddy, Yami Tapu, Gambo, Juda, Shouting Gomser, Tinda, Chidan, that Deni, Kawa Massage, and you Kawa Massage, Nivati, and Bayandu, Kawa Massage, and Kudu Chombu Kasuri and DSC, Kudu Chongan and Jurasi, Yon, Kajuka, Chiji, Chonjuka Nongo, or you done Kudu Chombo Siju, the Kasuri and Song.
So you have the tradition of the simultaneous arising as merged is in accordance with Tapo Gamboba's tradition, and then you have the amulet box in accordance with the tradition of the Kedub, Kedub Chembo.
Kedub Chombo Nanju, Chombo
Nanju, in accordance with the yogas of Kedub Kyumbo.
Oh, did that in the and do Chambu Castle days, young Chambu Castle de la Young drunk Mondo Dantazu, men that I am Java and Dundana, Mondo Rombanam some mercy. That Shaktango Mondo Ravodi to Romwebs in the Jumagua Romwebs, no one number as no someday, Mondo Ronam some city. Muja Young, Jonger on Doris in a or you done with you, Capsation, on Hong going on dinner, Jonganaka Justin, Delima Trugua Chison, that then drew the Lagjindo when Duela Carrion Shenidan London Gombe Shajengo Guni, drew a customer on Sharasi, that Chukalongo Turkosambo, that in the Shenidan London Gombe Toji, Shajengo Guni, Shenidan London Gombe Toji, Lagjiam, Duela, Cosambo, Roncher the Jongaji, Govendusena, this some gun on it and what took you dingy.
So, in accordance with the yogas of the amulet box, in accordance with the instructions of Kyungbo, then you have, like before, these three instructions. You have the preliminary, the actual, and the resultant practice. Rinpoche, the sumbutne tambu de Rinpoche.
The Sabu that Ambodi Mondu Rombab Nam Samsinada, or you that number someone that on there is in Mushi or Mariti Nayan, or you that Mondu Shatengo Mondu Wotela, or you that you ranches using some Goni, Mara Moto Gumi, that song you and do Mondu Rombab Nam Samsi.
It says the preliminary is the three aspects of the naturally abiding. That's the preliminary, and the actual body of the practice, is again to do with the practice of calm abiding and the special insight, freeing oneself from the four obstacles. Cultivating the practices of basically the karma awareness, special insight through freeing oneself from the these four obstacles, and thereby the third being attaining the resultant state, which is of the debu or debu, and thereby attaining the naturally arising three Buddha bodies.
Oh, you that in the going Monroe down, Major, Diver, some Goni Mara, you Memandava town, and Dango Tokyo Ding, Tang Mujer de Lion, Kumbu Motu Jijan Song Hosi, Tang Mujer de Goma Dina, Sheni down Gombo Cubs, or you that Shenigo, what the job Godi, that command on Jangu, Sheni Lambden Rogam and Jingedi, or that day down Longongo Cub de Lion, that's so you got to go. Shema Goba, so that Shenila, what the job go and do Gonda, I'm a commander holding Musan Gogoris and Mujela Kumbung or Toos and Song Yoding.
So in this way, you have the preliminary, the actual practice, and the result to be attained, and the actual body of the practice, which involves generating calm abiding and the special insight. And when cultivating these, then one experiences the many obstacles, such as the mental sinking, and the mental wandering or the mental sluggishness. These many different obstacles that are experienced in the course of generating calm abiding and special insight. So these obstacles here are regarded like thieves. So the actual body of the practice here is also referred to the practice of recognizing the thieves, which basically is recognizing one's obstacles in the practice.
Oji that in the do that you could do jumping on your good in the song. In that you got Tony or you that Yami Gambo in Marathon, Song you go, or you that Haji Joris in Yondu, you dance, you did Tinanga, Tambo somebody, Mondo around and some Marathon, you said it meant the town Damandava ending, or that in that you don't that any Shambaka just you didn't could be jumping on your day, you said go Garzego. And you song only Shambaka just did Lombachico Mang, you are what they and do, or that Shambaka Juka Dambi so the Juda Shamba Gajuka Tamara Piringi, the Kitty Chambu Nigerian Guyari, or that the Marayanji Sakengo, Gomiago, Chukur Tubodi, Naku Chutusi, Jardanji, Naru Chutuseachi, Naku Chutuseachi, Naru Chutuseati, Ginaru and Jidding, Gomiago, Tonsen Tubo, Della Naru Chutusango Dengi. Yanji Jitan Narovi. Cham Kandu Machi Nakamasi Jivari Tea, Yamne de Chutukan or Dudu and Aru Chutukan Mandava, Chutuk Nana Sivari. That day, Kajuk, Shakengo, so Dumbo, so the Naku Chutukat and Nanga Yua and do Naku Chutuk and La Asi, that Chutukan and the nation Rembi Hossi on Yuari.
Just as one had the four preliminaries, possessing the four preliminaries in accordance with the Gamboba traditions prior to engaging in the tradition of the simultaneously arising as merged. Within these four preliminaries, then one can find the similarity or these points that are explained here is also similar to what has been explained in accordance with the preliminary practices of Gamboba. Then, in the Kagyu tradition, also you have the Mahamudra practice in accordance with the Shamba Kagyu tradition. The Shamba is like is a name of a place in Tibet, and in the Kagyu tradition that was practiced in that place. In that place. So much of the principal instructions of the Shamba Kagyu tradition is also based on the instructions of Kedu Kyungbo, and then known as the six dharmas and the six dharmas of the Dakini Niguma. You have the six yogas of Nirupa, but like the six dharmas of Niguma is like it's a little bit different.
Or that is so good. The need in something is like a jury the jihadis on Yeshuna, I want you to Zuko, I want to understand to the Yeshuna.
So we will go through the explanation of the six dharmas in accordance with the Niguma tomorrow, but for the meanwhile, if people have questions to clarify today's teachings, you can ask now. Sure.
This morning, Rinpoche talked about the tantric path of seeing happening when you go from the example clear light to meaning clear light. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could talk about the Sok and the Soglam and the Jorlam and the Gomlam. If there's a definitive marker in those in the tantric path.
Ngagi Tonglam Tobres.
P was there, the Jolam Kabajagivari, Pedonji was there, Tonji was there, the Mate Gontela, or Jida, Yurgen, Saudia Chemo, Shindan travel on some drama, the Tombani, most of the Namtabani, Paulam Tobari, Papajivari, Paulam Tobani Nisakiva.
Tolam
Toba. Tonam Toba, Don Ponam Toba, Dinam Guy and do
Tonam Toba, the Palam
Toba, Dinam Bay and do Tonam Toba, Don Yam, Papa, Sosuchi, Tonam, Jolam, you Kavi and do Sosuchi, Cheber than Papa, Tombani, most of the Mugazin Toman, Tonga and do Papa, then Tonam Toba, Nisha.
Rinpoche says that when one generates the subjective mind of Mahamudra, which is the direct realization of emptiness, then that is when one attains the path of seeing, attains the Arya path. The prior paths, which is a path of accumulation and the path of preparation, are like ordinary paths. You want more clarification? So you do not.
Well, I understood in the past that if you, at that point where you gain the path of seeing in the tantric path, that's like the 8th bhumi, is that correct?
8th bhumi. Ngagi tholam thobarachina ani sagyaba le leveres.
Mari sa tambo popular toba tamar sar de toba dan sa tambo toba tholam toba so dinya men gyo arwa.
Rimchekandes sa tambo da.
Sa tambo dan tholam toba popular sar de jirwa so dinya. Teni jeni kali ga sa tambo.
Attaining the first bhumi and the path of seeing is the same. First bhumi, not the 8th. Did you say 8th? Yeah, no, first bhumi and attaining the Arya path of seeing is the same.
I think he wants to know the level, the similarity between the sutra path and the tantric path.
Is that what you said, sutra path and tantric path?
Yes, it is.
I don't know. Well,
Yeah, that's...
Sutra path and tantric path of what?
The path of seeing.
Ngagi tholam da dogi tholam nile keba yoresa.
Ori dadi ti garse go tomba nyango sanda tak mata ko chibanda uyo mari yena yango ji namdi dogo lam ko tena numba tab jawa yendu tamar ji nanshin siji de ko chani mata chibar ji wari
in realizing emptiness directly, whether it is on the sutra path of seeing or the tantric path of seeing, it is the same. Whereas on the tantric path of seeing, the difference is in the whether one, the eliminating the, grasping at ordinary appearance, Rinpoche, ngagi tholam gi negafso thamebe nashe.
Thamara nashin the dogon tholam ko kapsu thamara nashin ji ngo de chir ma chir don tinra kicha yuwa mari de thamara nashin yuba jirjag rewa ngak ko kapsu thamara nashin de mar chi chong ro garab chin ro go yuwa chi dang deni mar tomba ni tawya go lo de yong in shendan travel sem tramo ti tomba ni ngo san de toba di ndoli chebar dan baba chi ending ndoni shiwa rapi tomba ni ngo san de toba rin tramu toba di tawani songya sang go yuwa mari de tela tono yuwa marwa.
So on the sutra path of seeing, you have no talk of whether one has done away with grasping at ordinary appearance as such, and also the mind realizing that emptiness is still regarded as a core state of the mind. There is no talk of subtle mind or whether there is grasping at ordinary appearance. In the tantric path of seeing, then you have the mind which is realizing emptiness regarded as a subtle mind, realizing emptiness, and also you have a much weakened state of the mind, grasping at ordinary appearance, so forth like that. Those kind of features are involved in the tantric path of seeing.
Pe kaji tena jisa tena kaji ka tena pe tena jarke yuwa jiga perna jiga namdra dang taso man trichi go jiga nam dang kholo go to go ya nam kam phang ne ro go yuwa redi to perna jiga dosha go jiga tomba nyango son da takya ro shandan traba langsung tramo di tomba nyango son da takya di jiga garse go rocket na ta tang da dawa na lan roya la ma teli jang ni chi chwa chi yar tang go yo wa ti ngak dang da ti tin da chi tin.
Rinpoche used the analogy saying that when an aeroplane flies, you have the gas and the wheels all involved, enabling a plane to fly, and that is like realizing emptiness on the sutra path, and but realizing emptiness on the tantric path is like the rocket going to the moon. Go ahead.
If someone has completed the generation stage and completion stage on the Kara chakra, is the next practice this Mahamudra practice? Today's Mahamudra practice.
그거기 이거는 계속 이 gom tsabare chine di jela ani chachin gomya tharigi kanambe chachin in the gombol vesa
That member Tazamata, the Guru Chiram, the Sagram going on dinner, the Chachin giver. They need on Hong going on good Chachin giver.
Rinpoche says, you know, you have Mahamudra presented as a different topic, but actually when you engage in color chakras, generation and completion stage yoga, already you are engaged in the Mahamudra practice. Because what is the Mahamudra practice? It's the practice of calm abiding and the special insight.
Then I Chachin Wiji, the Chelang Goni, Mutu goes a dinner, to Janso and the Giliwa in a say and Chachin Goya, the Sheni Don Hongtoniga Gungu, the Gonish in the Wijagu. Then you got Chachin saying.
So that's why in the actual body of the practice it says introducing you to the two practice of calm abiding and the special insight, you know. So when one engages in the Mahamudra practice, basically it is you know, being introduced to the practice of calm abiding and the special insight.
Then Sheni Don Hongtong on Doja Sheni Don Hongtong, my imba, Mosako Sheni Don Hongtong, Sergeant Imba and do the like Chachin saying.
And to differentiate it from the sutra, calm abiding and special insight, to signify it as the calm abiding and the special insight of the tantric practice, so it is given the name Mahamudra. To differentiate it from the sutra practice of calm abiding and special insight, the tantric practice of the calm abiding and special insight is given the name Mahamudra. In the Sutra Mahamudra, you have the object emptiness and the subject mind realizing that emptiness in the Sutra path as being the Mahamudra. Yes.
What is it that removes in the tantric path the obstacles to omniscience?
Nagi lamne lamgi thone gombarichina shedip the kandis pa pangores ngalam thol shedip kandis pangores.
Then Malam got on the Chida Ponyadi, Pondu Pondanda, which you Pondango Ludin Davio Marimata, the Chindan travel, some tramoti teni, Shini going on dinner, Hakala, Shinigam Hakaji, Titani, Haki Tango, Tonyo Gona, Hakanona, Range Meba, Titango, Tonyo Gombotani, or that Shidapongo, Tela, Durino Jango, Gon and Tambongo Poncha, Gombongo Poncha, Tambongo Poncha, the Satambo is on the pont. Then his son Yuan is on a Gombongo Poncha, Tela, Kurgushin, or that son Yuan is a Juavati, Yarangu.
Rinpoche says in the sutra, in the tantric, on the path of the tantra, then you know, when one engages in the practices of the calm abiding, this single point concentration of the calm abiding, then it focuses on the holy body of the deity, the divine body of the deity, and then the special insight is meditating on the deity's body as appearing but without existing by way of its own nature. So it is with this that with this subtle mind, focusing on the divine body of the deity, while appearing being empty of existing by way of its own nature, is the mind which is involved to eliminate the obstacles. But on the path of the sutra, then you have obstacles to be abandoned on the path of seeing, obstacles to be abandoned on the path of meditation. Obstacles which are abandoned on the path of seeing is on the begins on the first bhumi, then obstacles to be abandoned in the path of the meditation, then all of the obstacles that are to be abandoned are like divided into 9 cycles, and then along the rest of the bhumis, then those get to be abandoned.
Namdang, Kolo, Tindagan, Rodina, Rokita, Telimara, Karizago, she Chimbuji, Mea, and do Kali and do Guava. You knock the Ponsico, Lodi, Lu Tamu, and do that you Rokita, Pijaratina, she Chimu and do Marinja and Japon do Guava.
So, the mind abandoning the obstacles on the sutra path is a much weaker state of the mind, and therefore it takes a longer period of time to be able to work on the obstacles to be abandoned, whereas the mind generated on the tantric paths, because it's a subtle mind, it's regarded as a much more powerful state of mind, and is therefore able to abandon the obstacles to enlightenment much more quickly. It's like you have one set of wheels and another kind of gas for the slower planes, and then you have one set of wheels and another more refined kind of gas for the rockets. So like this analogy, then the mind in the sutra path and tantra path, then because of that difference in the power of the mind, then accordingly, then it takes shorter or longer periods of time to be able to abandon the obstacles. Go ahead.
Can you have some specific instruction for us on what we can do before we go to sleep in order to learn more from our dreams?
To learn more from
our dreams?
Dreams.
Ni mo fu ye gon le inte nyamlen inte kechia ayus ni ma lo pe khon le nyamlen che ani ni lo pe ka su ni lam tam bra chwa ni lam thone chik lop chen len ya gi che do lop chen len ya gi che do inte ni mo lu ni mo khon nyamlen inte mix kechia ayus
te yuwa ji nyamala kona ji gezam chebar jengon de jiya ji ngone zango da ya yeni ji li ko de so yela chaya ji shangju ji samyena tombanye yena de so sanglo tang tinda ji wa ngone nyi khusong a yena nyi ka si yen renbo yena ti shen jere si ji giwe ngo wen jin dungi nyi de thola ga man dungi tinda yang go yo se gi wa nyamala kona ji control dala ni no so yena nyi di ma ma gi wan ru se gi wa yang control yang ma ba gi yang ma ba ji jang ne nyi ku so na tong nyi ma si ji de gi wa yang ma dingi ma gi wa yang ma dingi.
So Rinpoche says, before going to sleep, for example, if one generates a very positive state of mind, or goes to sleep reciting mantras, visualizing the deity, with any of the thoughts of bodhicitta, emptiness, then the entire time frame of that sleep becomes a positive, virtuous experience. And whereas if one goes to sleep without any kind of particular state of mind, virtuous or non-virtuous, just a neutral state of mind, then the entire time frame of that sleep becomes wasted. Becomes wasted. Does not become positive. Yeah, go ahead.
As an ordinary human being, it's easy for me to see the difference between my mind stream and someone else's mind stream. Once a Buddha, it's difficult. It's easy for me to see how I have certain things that are negative, certain delusions that maybe other people don't have. So I can see that happening. But as a Buddha, as an omniscient being, what differentiates one Buddha's mind stream from another? Do they see the same thing?
Chidang susu kebus susu samdan susu semda shengi sem the kewa tungudo spena susu le yobe nyomo shenla meva shenla yobe nyomo susu meva inde the kewa the tungudos sange na pensu chi jebre china chikpa de jegina kewa inde ke jegi yona
ori tadi sanji na bezen jeva yena kanga ji sanji na bezen ji chong pa sending yon den gan den ding yin ba yin du wa ji so dang na de char ge yo ji ra ma tang de mande chi ban da yo sama
the Buddhas in amongst themselves other than experiencing pure vision or pure appearances of everything that they see, other than that, then there would be no difference like that, other than the experience of pure appearances. Seeing whatever they see is see them free of mistakes and only in quality.
So they would see exactly the same thing. The chocolate cake would be exactly the same for each Buddha.
Like at the Frankenstein at the Sangin non-pensu jet. Chikchila chikpa kyan jam machine shiwa kewa indicate jam and so kyun kun say yonder kun da chikpa jaya ra chikpa machine chik and crangy the Tsenshab the chocolate chip and gange chikpa sim machine dile kewa san senior mab in the dress.
Oh, the budget is zero.
It's like that. But even if it's a chocolate, you have different shapes, different colors. It is chocolate, but you have slight variations in that chocolate.
Usually we say when you use that clear light mind, directly seeing emptiness, then great bliss arises. And is that because of that great bliss is the nature of that mind, or why only when you have that clear mind, realizing emptiness, the great bliss
arises? Verse sem toni tove verse sem jorwa di gula dewa chimbo yoba di toni tove verse sem gi ranshin chi na kande na
ori ta de dewa go tong de chani de ing gi warwa when na ji dewa go den gwa de lang so nam song ga na ni thong ba ngin jong sam lo tong ngin jong sam lo tong na khro ni mi la chu ba ji dan khro li tu Tava am Sanji ji Koma ji Thumna Nyamba, Sanju ji Samsi ji de Loir de Shariala, Shamba dan Nyenji Gom Gogoyari, Shamba dan Nyenji Goyan Duna, or Ji Genji Kangar de Mazoba Chino, Ji Nyenji, Ji Tua Nyenji Jambuton, Deva Sik Jambuji Jangu, Ti Jeti Tonga Yendu, Ji did that Divanigan Wu Yerminda, which you did.
The mind of clear light, realizing emptiness and the great bliss are in nature, they are indivisible, inseparable. In nature, these two, in nature they are inseparable. These two, clear light mind, realizing emptiness, and the great bliss. Like, for example, when one generates the mind of renunciation, seeing the faults of a cyclic existence or the shortcomings of cyclic existence, and then induced by this thought, you have the thought to seek liberation out of cyclic existence. Then one thinks about the sufferings of sentient beings. Then love and compassion, feeling unbearable for the sufferings of others. Arises, that kind of bodhicitta arises. So all of these, whether it's renunciation and bodhicitta, each mind kind of renders the follow-up mind, kind of like that. So so in nature they are the same. In nature they are inseparable.
When I go Diva don't then Namba, Shambasi Jidi, Ninji don't so Dinger don't turn Namba. Samjay Kanga Divajang Dena Yakundiga Sam Gatsur Gava Survaji Chiva Yenduti Dinam Chicharangu Yuarva Dinam Ding Oni Maraji Karijina Di Chichimboji Yendu Venaji Karzo Gasurgo Goni Lika Kangarji Kasishina Kangarton Dokumarva Petino that Divan dance Tinagatokindi.
So, for example, when one says, how wonderful it would be if sentient beings had happiness, it is the mind of infinite loving kindness that generates that kind of thought, wishing for sentient beings to be free of suffering. It is that mind of compassion, wanting that for sentient beings. So. When you have those states of the mind, there is a great happiness within that mind, there is a sense of great joy in that mind, which is able to undergo any hardships. When you have that kind of joy or happiness or bliss within the mind, then one does not see difficulties as difficulties.
When we're talking about the absolute Guru, the Dharmakaya of all the Buddhas, is that like one big mind, like an ocean, and when we become enlightened, we become a part of this one mind, or each Dharmakaya, each sentient being becomes a Buddha, is a completely separate mind?
Sangye Tamche ki choku se ati chik re Sangye Tamche ki choku susu rangawa in the rest. And susu kibu semche sangye tu kan susu choku rang ngunse re ya mangi choku chili nimdo juga in the
Ori dadi rini warwa jita jirdan ji sanji damji ga chuka yamba rin dana yang jiga rana so tijila jangdingi ga chuka de yandu jaga goni kakan indi warwa.
With regards to the Dharmakaya of all of the Buddhas, in being a state of Dharmakaya, they are the same. But in being the Dharmakaya state of each individual mental continuum, in having that quality of that Dharmakaya is the same, but although it is distinguished as being the Dharmakaya of an individual particular continuum.
When my Jani Jaya Marjiga Yam the Marichiboji town, Kaloya Wondasa, to get the chicken on it, Karsawa Kanda, Taptinaji, Chibujan, and Suzu, Jala Gasuga, the Gasuri and Bandanyamati, just so Dija.
For example, if 100 or 200 people, had a great party and ate well and danced well, it's all the same experience, but it is still that having a great meal and having the joy of that experience of that party is an individual experience like that.
So if you're merging with the mind of the Guru, you still have two completely separate minds, or do the minds ever actually come together?
Is it a merge?
If you're becoming oneness with the Guru's mind and merging with the Guru's mind, do you ever actually join the minds together, or is it always two separate members?
The susu sem da susu lame sem yermetu samlutaya chorba. Tinde samlutandu kanlia susu sem de lame sem da de gore ya kane loga interest.
That is the mission of good music down, Rango Semni, Rango Tishi down, Teniga, Yamden, River, so no, you know, very matter, Jetati by and do, Niga Yamden, the other chicken, Savaji, Maridi, Yamden, River, no, I shall Shibati and do, Yerme Band of which
in taking the blessings of the Guru's holy mind, then you generate that visualization appearance of your own mind unified with the Guru's mind. But you have that appearance of visualization in the context of receiving the blessings or empowering your own mind through that meditation. But there's no such thing as your mind as unifying with the, being one, like that, joining together.